God bless you, you magnificent hairy bastard. I'm a big fan of Daniel Bryan, as are most people who aren't contrary bastards, and his career's been a real roller coaster over the years, albeit a roller coaster that suddenly stops in the middle of the ride and you have to get off and you're like, oh, I thought there was more, but the carnival guy just shakes his head and looks off in the distance like, don't cry, not in front of the customers, and then everyone walks home a bit sad, and sure, you have a Pizza Hut, but no one really talks. Just under a year ago, the most likeable wrestler in the world hung up his boots and stepped aside to become the most likeable general manager in the world. That is a great but understandable shame, and WWE would like you to remember his greatest moments in the ring, but not these. These moments are B+ at best. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 things WWE want you to forget about Daniel Bryan. Number 10, Buddy Peacock. You may not think about it that much, but a wrestler's name is very important. After all, who would you rather watch wrestle, The Rock or Dwayne Johnson? The Undertaker or Mark Calloway? Shawn Michaels or Michael Hickenbottom? Oh dear. When Mr. Yes Movement wrestled on the Indies, he used his real name of Bryan Danielson, to which WWE's approach was, is it worth it? Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it, and reverse it, changing it to Daniel Bryan. That was William Regal's decision, which was great because when asked to come up with some names by himself, Bryan came up with Lloyd Bonaire, which is lovely and very close to Lloyd Boner, and Buddy Peacock. Why was Daniel Bryan so desperate to include cock and boner in his name? Buddy Peacock. Jesus Christ, he sounds like a celebrity car salesman who was indicted for masturbating in swimming pools. Number 9, he was supposed to wrestle Charlie Sheen. American Dragon versus Tiger Blood. Sounds like the sort of thing you'd find in the bargain bin of Blockbusters, and if you don't know what Blockbusters was, off child. But yes, in 2012, according to Daniel Bryan's autobiography, hot off the whole public breakdown winning meme storm thing, Vince, attracted as he is to human implosion, put plans in place for the ambassador to drugs himself to square off against Daniel Bryan at goddamn SummerSlam. A Raw 1000, Sheen as social media person, I don't know, for the evening took a pot shot at then heel Daniel Bryan, who fired back in an interview. However, thankfully the proposed match fell apart, and considering that WWE like their celebs to come out on top, we were spared the best technical wrestler alive, jobbing out to the guy from 2.5 Men. Number 8, he had heat for being vegan. That's WWE for you. You don't feast on the flesh of the dead. You're not a fighter. I bet you eat ice cream as well, you giant vagina. Yes, despite the fact that he could tie you up like shoelaces and kick you so hard that you change hair color, Daniel Bryan was dismissed backstage for being a vegan. Vince McMahon, who probably eats 2 steaks at a time, pushing them into his ear so the masculinity gets to his brain faster, once responded to Jericho praising Bryan with disgust. Him, he said, he doesn't even eat meat. The disdain went so deep that when he arrived on the main roster, they kept referring to it. He's small, he's weak, he's vegan. And then, Daniel Bryan proved to be one of the most athletic competitors ever, and WWE had to eat their words medium rare. Number 7, some of his talking smack shoots. Let's be clear, talking smack is a force for good in this world. What could have been very easily just another of those soundbite-riddled wastes of airtime like the Raw pre-show or the Mountain Dew kickoff has, over time, become near essential viewing and home to some of the best promos of 2016. The Miz shook the wrestling world, Ambrose shot on John Cena, Baron Corbin is great all the time for some reason. It's marvelous. It's also where SmackDown GM Daniel Bryan goes to push the boundaries of his employment by saying increasingly incendiary things to Renee Young, while she gives him a look that screams, please Daniel, please, I need this job. Thing is, Daniel Bryan knows his value, knows he ain't getting fired, and if he does, cool, he gets to go wrestle in Ring of Honor, so he's free to shoot on WWE's over-reliance on part-timers, bring up Mick Foley going to TNA, and make jokes about fisting. I mean, do something, Vince. Number 6, heat with Batista. It's hard to imagine Daniel Bryan having heat with anyone. He's more Care Bear than man, but Batista managed to get annoyed with him at WrestleMania 30. Now, to be fair to Mr. Batista, 2014 was a very difficult time for the animal. He was going through his blue period. At WrestleMania 30, in the greatest moment of Daniel Bryan's career, he beat Batista and Randy Orton in a triple threat, making Mr. Popularity himself tap in the middle of the ring. Batista says he was fine putting Daniel Bryan over, was very happy to tap, but was left, in his own words, pissed off at how after taking 3 finishers, Bryan was yesing and celebrating like he wasn't injured during the post-match. Some have speculated that this animosity that Batista had to the booking led to his refusal to work one-on-one with Daniel Bryan after Mania, but to his credit, Batista claims that's not the case and that he simply preferred the Evolution Shield angle, in which he came off looking really strong. Number 5, being released in 2001. That's right, Daniel Bryan signed with the WWE developmental territory as far back as 2000, penning a deal with Memphis Championship Wrestling, working often as the American Dragon. However, despite winning the Light Heavyweight Championship and the Tag Championships with Spanky, aka Brian Kendrick, WWE severed its ties with MCW in 2001 and released him from his contract. This turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as this freed Daniel Bryan to travel to Japan, the UK, PWG, and Ring of Honor, and gain the experience he needed to become a multi-style master. Without WWE releasing him, had they taken him on and coached him exclusively in the WWE style, he may have have been a more limited performer, which WWE certainly won't want you to remember. And speaking of his training, number 4, his real mentor wasn't Shawn Michaels. Hey, remember 2013 when WWE couldn't stop popping a bollock at how Shawn Michaels trained Daniel Bryan, and Daniel Bryan was Shawn Michaels' protege, and how one time Daniel Bryan and Shawn Michaels kissed, but that was just a bit of fun, it didn't really mean anything. Well, that's typical WWE spin, and while it's true that Daniel Bryan was part of a class at Shawn Michaels' wrestling school, apparently HBK wasn't all that great at imparting what came naturally to him, and it was actually during his time at Memphis Championship Wrestling that Daniel Bryan found his one true mentor, William Regal, whom Bryan frequently credits as giving him more of the instrumentals to his game than he ever got from HBK, but that doesn't fit the story, so their relationship never escalates to the mentor-manatee relationship WWE tries to tell you Shawn and D-Bry shared. Number 3, nearly fighting Triple H for real. As you might expect from a man who spends his time wearing plaid and chopping wood and growing his own kale, it's quite hard to make Daniel Bryan really cross, but hey, if anyone can manage it, it's the game. On the June 17th episode of Raw in 2013, while Bryan was really starting to blow up in popularity, he was wrestling a no-DQ match against Randall Keith Orton and suffered a stinger, a nerve injury, rendering him unable to move his arms after a flying dropkick. Despite this, Bryan kept wrestling because that's his mentality. Unless you break your leg or your cock falls off, you keep going. Eventually, Triple H had the match called off from backstage, and suddenly a match Daniel Bryan was supposed to win was awarded to Orton via stoppage. Bryan stormed backstage, calling the decision bullshit, and got nose-to-nose with Triple H. The confrontation almost came to blows, which would surely have seen disciplinary action. Speaking of, number 2, getting fired. No matter how much WWE would like us to forget that they almost permanently lost one of their hottest stars, it's damn impossible because it happened during one of the most memorable Raw angles ever. In 2010, the Nexus invaded Raw and went all Blazing Saddles pie fight on that motherfucker, trashing the ring, the barriers, and also the John Cena. All good, wholesome fun, apart from the fact that shortly following the incident, Mr. Bryan was fired. Why? For choking Justin Roberts with his tie and spitting on John Cena. WWE sponsors balked at such violence and wanted Bryan's head, and WWE complied and canned the future World Heavyweight Champion. Thankfully, he was rehired 2.5 months later, and that is a close call. And number 1, he's been cleared by multiple doctors. He just wants to wrestle. Look at him, unveiling new titles on SmackDown that he can't compete for, booking talent in matches wishing it was him. Won't someone please adopt this pup? But WWE's doctors won't clear him, because tests they did found a concussion-related lesion on his brain. So that makes sense, right? Which is why WWE want you to forget that Bryan was cleared to wrestle by multiple doctors before his decision to retire. His personal physician cleared him, as well as a neurology specialist from UCLA, less than a month before he announced retirement. Now, look, I'm not about to suggest which tests are right or second-guess medical opinion. It's just that WWE would quite like us to forget about these differing medical findings, not get our hopes up for Daniel Bryan's wrestling return. But, I mean, gosh, look at him. Look at his eyes. He just wants to wrestle.
We're never going to stop doing magazines called wrestling. It's time for issue 4, the first magazine of 2017. And to celebrate, we're looking back on the wrestling year that was, including end-of-year awards for best and worst matches of 2016, best and worst wrestlers of 2016, best and worst feuds, and many more. Also, a gigantic career retrospective on AJ Styles, Dixie Carter's crimes against wrestling, and how WWE should have booked the road to WrestleMania 2016, written by this sexual Catherine Wheel. As ever, the magazine is available now to order at shop.whatculture.com. For the love of God, buy it.